Hello again. The thumbnail to this video shows the graduating class of the Access to Science course at Redbridge College in Chadwell Heath. This is on the outskirts of East London, just before Romford. It will be observed that not one of these future radiographers and dietitians are white English. The picture's the same as other schools and colleges across the whole of London, and also increasingly in other parts of southeast England as well. The reason is simple. 57% of babies in London are now born to mothers who were born abroad. If you add to that figure the babies born to black and Asian people who were themselves born in Britain, we see that white English babies make up a tiny proportion of the next generation. There are 1.8 million more people living in London than there were 20 years ago, almost all of them foreigners or born to foreigners, which of course is why all our open spaces and green belt are now being concreted over so that houses can be built for all the new immigrants. London is no longer an English city. Places like Luton and Leicester have of course been heading in that direction for years, but shockingly, Oxford and Cambridge are now in the same position. 57% of babies in Cambridge are born to foreign mothers, as are 53% of those in Oxford. I give a link in the description to this video to a report from the organisation Migration Watch, which has been collating these statistics. Several people commenting here have asked me what can be done about the disappearance of England, which is, of course, accelerating at the moment. The answer is, I'm afraid, very little. Labour and the Conservative Party are both responsible for this disaster, and neither shows any signs at all that they regret what they've done or that they're prepared to do anything about the situation, let alone change their ways in the future. We currently have a supposedly conservative government who behave exactly like socialists, with their soft stance on immigration and their spendthrift ways and desire to nationalise things. There's no hope there. Remember, they have also granted millions of Chinese people in Hong Kong the right to come and live in Britain. You can forget about the Conservatives as far as immigration is concerned. The Labour Party are even worse when it comes to consideration of immigration. They don't see the problem either. Some people here have urged supporting fringe groups such as the Patriotic Alternative, but I can't see that doing any good. None of the small political parties such as National Front or BNP have ever managed to get a single member into Parliament, and the fact is that people in England will by and large vote only for the Tories or Labour Party. The system is rigged in favour of those two main parties, of course. In the two general elections in 1974, the National Front picked up around 5% of the vote, but this did not translate into a single seat in Parliament. I believe that large-scale immigration into England will continue in the future, and all the signs are that withdrawing from the European Union has not made the slightest bit of difference to controlling our borders. In other words, foreigners are still flooding into the country and settling here, and any attempt to remove them will be frustrated, as we saw with the recent efforts to deport Jamaican criminals. Some people, I'm one of them, moved from inner London to the very edge of London, but that's only a delaying tactic, and the situation in places on the outskirts of London and in southeast England generally is altering rapidly. Just imagine Oxford having a minority of babies born to English mothers. I don't wish to be pessimistic, but I really cannot see any prospect of halting, let alone reversing what is happening. There might be some hope if those settling in Britain indicated that they had come to the country because they valued the tolerant society here and showed that they wished to fit in and adopt our customs and way of life. But this isn't what we're seeing at all. Instead, people who come from countries with traditions of stabbing each other up over some fancied slight simply come to England and continue their old traditions. Those who marry their cousins and produce children who die young or struggle with terrible disabilities carry on doing this in England, and the ones who are in the habit of carrying guns and blowing up their enemies do the same on the streets of London and Manchester. England, as it has been for many centuries, will soon be no more, and the people really to blame are the politicians and intellectuals who were incapable of seeing what was plainly obvious to so many ordinary men and women, that unrestricted immigration would bring about the collapse of the most liberal and democratic place in the world.